Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Julie, you want to take the roll call?
Sure. Dawn Vanny.
Here.
Deborah Nelson.
Here.
Marilyn Ertley.
Here.
Michelle Blythe.
Here.
Yvonne Glardo.
Here.
Jan Schweddy and Heather Logan are excused.
Thank you, Julie. Then I have a proclamation to read since it's Indigenous Peoples' Day. It's the perfect time for us to do our land acknowledgement. So we honor the first people of these lands by acknowledging that the area in which we gather is within the traditional territory of the Still-Guamish tribe of Indians. The Still-Guamish people have inhabited these lands and waters since time immemorial, and their ancestors remain in this territory to this day. The Still-Guamish tribe have held these lands and have cultural traditions passed on to them by their ancestors, who believe that they are caretakers of lands and waters. The Still-Guamish tribe continues to be leading contributors to the area's natural resource preservation, social outreach programs, and are active contributors to building Arlington's future. Now, therefore, I, Barb Tolbert, Mayor of Arlington, do hereby proclaim October 10th, 2022 as Indigenous Peoples' Day and encourage all residents to recognize the Still-Guamish tribe of Indians as the original inhabitants of Arlington. It makes me think of Mike Hobson.
Me too. Appreciate him doing this.
Okay, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the first item on our, oh, good, Jim is here. First item on our workshop this evening is a low bid award for the Washington Trucking Water Main Replacement Project. Appreciate you all wearing pink over there to support Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
I wanted to say something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and council members. This item before you is for the installation of the water main that you let us procure earlier this year. Ductile iron pipe was scarce. We were able to find some. We purchased it. We set it aside for this project. We went out to bid. We received 9 bids for this project. The low bid was from WSB in the amount of $125,931.09. They were a qualified bidder. Everything checked out, and we're recommending that we award this contract to WSB Excavation.
All right, thank you, Jim. Does anybody have any questions for Jim on this one?
No.
It's nice to see we got 9 bids.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Okay, the next thing we have is the 2022 code amendments, and Amy Rusko is here to present those to us.
Your microphone, Amy.
Thank you. I'll start over. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. We're going to start tonight off with a little background. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties because I forgot to print my summary of what I was going to talk about, so I need to do it from the computer. So I apologize for this kind of weird setup. And then, of course, it logs me out. So 1 second. Starting off great. So the majority, first off, sorry to inundate you with about a 2-month worth of reading in about a week with 640 pages. I'd like to thank our attorney for completing all of the ordinances in a very timely fashion. But I do want to let you know that the majority of the 640 pages, I was going to attempt to count but ran out of time, are housekeeping items that relate to the 2020 zoning map update and changes to 2036, which I'll go over in a minute. And then I do want to point out, I will go over the items that I believe are not really housekeeping items and things that I want to make sure that you're aware of. So, this is interesting. So the changes that were made in 2020 were under Ordinance 2020-019. And so what that did was it created different zones throughout the city. So first, I'm kind of skipping around a little bit, but it's kind of needed, I guess. So there's a difference between zoning districts and transects themselves. So transects are within the mixed-use overlay in the commercial corridor zone, and then the rest of the zones are under regular zoning, as I call it, instead of the mixed use. So in this change in 2020, what happened was we only had a few residential zoning districts. And so in order to get different housing types in different zones and not allowing, say, a townhouse in Glen Eagle, the only way to do that is to kind of make new zones or change zones so they're in certain areas and not in other areas. So what we did was we had the names like residential high density, residential medium density, residential low density, and then we changed them to capacities. So residential high capacity, that was a name change. The medium density went to residential medium capacity and residential moderate capacity. So out of like one zone became two. So that left us with not very many regulations regarding those two areas because the zones changed within the zoning code. And then we also did an ultra low capacity for the Lindsay annexation area and the East Hill area because they have the master plan overlay. And then the subdivisions that were already existing stayed at the residential low capacity. So by doing that though, and then creating the commercial corridor as a zone and not as an overlay. So prior to this change, the Smoky Point area and the Camp Prairie area had an overlay over the entire area. So now with the commercial corridor, it actually made it a zone instead of an overlay. So then we also didn't have all the regulations we needed for the commercial zone, the commercial corridor zone itself. So those are both fall under the mixed use development regulations. So that's where it kind of gets tricky. I'm just trying to give you background on what happened. So out of that, we changed the map. So all the zoning districts got changed on the map, and we did not change any of our code to make sure that we had the regulations for each one of those new zones. And that is what I am here today to talk to you about, and that is what prompted us going forward with these changes. Actually, I didn't know that it changed, so it was in my first week back, and I get a phone call about something, and that's when I discovered that we didn't have everything that we needed for each zone. So then we got started on the code amendments. So that's what the majority of these changes are, is changing out the zoning designations in all the chapters. And then creating density and dimensional standards, parking standards. There's different housing types that also went with that. So we now allow townhouses and fourplexes and duplexes, triplexes, cottage housing, a whole bunch of different varieties within that RMOD and the RMC zone that we did not allow prior. So that came with a whole new slew of challenges on how our code did not meet the development and where we were trying to go with that. So that is kind of the first one. So that, and then also within the code, there were things that had not been changed for 10 plus years that we just kind of let go that didn't really have an effect on anything. No one really questioned it. No one asked questions. It was just, they were kind of nothing kind of areas in the code. And we decided to take that on as well and make those changes while we were in there. So that's how it morphed from like 4 or 5 chapters into what you see today. And then I also have had a personal issue with the way we had our permissible use table. So once I changed that, it was off of numbers. So every use was connected to a number, and then the numbers went to how you figure out how the parking is, how the landscaping is. So without the numbers, once I took those away, then I had to reorganize the rest of those chapters. So that's kind of how it went from, hey, let's just do density dimensions to what it got to. Let's see, and then we also did have some other changes from the state. There was, in 2017, the state passed a bill for final plats, anything over 9 lots, because 9 lots is a short plat that gets approved administratively already. Anything over 9 lots would previously came or comes to council for approval. So with that bill, they were allowing the plats to be finalized at the administrative level, so the director level. And then the critical areas ordinance, we were out of date with the 2018 Department of Ecology guidance. And when I went to make the update and sent that to them for review, they kind of chuckled and said, we knew someone would get caught, and they were doing an update right now as well. So I ended up being able to take their update from 2022 and implementing it now. So we actually are probably one of the first cities to actually have the update, and that basically is all around wetlands. So it's wetland buffers and wetland mitigation, things you can do in the buffer or how to screen against it, like reducing lighting, things like that for parking lots next to wetlands. So to give the overall that we did was correcting the zoning designations, changing the director name to Community and Economic Development Director, correcting references, because then I soon found out that it was super fun to go through each one and see which, I change a chapter and then I have to figure out where else the chapter is. So correcting all the references to all the other chapters within and that's also what added a couple chapters, because there were things we weren't going to change in a particular chapter until we had to reference one that we did. And then we previously had design guidelines for everything, and I believe it was 18, I'm not sure the exact year, that we changed it from guidelines to standards. So all of that had to be updated. And then we had the new Old Town Residential Design Standards. So things were removed from the code to reference that new document. And then we just updated everything that we had new basically since about 16, 17. So the complete streets policy. And then we made the parking regulation changes that were requested by council. And then we added a new chapter for annexations. We previously had a chapter that basically said, check this county and state. And so we went through our process. There's still more to it, an annexation process, but it gives people the outlining guideline for that. And then, I don't know if I have, oh no, that's for if we need it. I think I'm kind of done with that. So for the major changes, what we have proposed is to have administrative approval on final plats. Adding a section for private roads for townhouses and/or unit lot subdivisions where necessary. So we're still going to require public roads where possible, but in order to get townhouses in certain areas, we discovered that private roads are needed. So there's a reduction in the roadway width, and those would remain with the developer and/or the homeowner association.
Those would be roads that would be internal to the development.
Correct, yes,
Okay.
that's correct. Yeah, so that's a good point. So yes, on the outside, there would still be the public road, say like Gilman, well, I think Gilman Walker has all public, but an example would be if one of their roads was private, then Alcazar would still be public. So they'd still have their public road frontage, but then they could be private within. And and then we created regulations around that on certain, when private roads can be used and when they cannot be. And then I already mentioned the removal of the Old Town Residential Design Standards. They're under a new document, reorganizing the permissible use table layout, which then in turn went to the parking and landscaping tables. We revised the ADU allowances, We added screening requirements for outdoor storage. We clarified fences and walls, type and height. A building code allows up to 7 feet, so zoning code went to 6 feet with a foot of lattice and/or decorative on top to meet the 7 feet. We added some garage setbacks regulations, added some language for panhandle lots, any new panhandle lots to require a variance. We increased the open space requirement on development from 5% to 10% to get us more open space within each development. That's kind of been an issue with, well, not an issue. We've heard back from public comment. A lot of public comment when we send a notice out will say, well, where's all their park space? So that's kind of, and in our code, we couldn't really do anything about it with the requirement of 5%. We increased the planting strip along public roads from 4.5 feet to 5 feet. We've been requiring 5 feet for quite some time, but our code doesn't state that, so that was an update. We added the Cascade Industrial Center traffic impact fees, updated the critical areas ordinance to meet the most recent Department of Ecology guidance, added the new annexation chapter, updated the parking regulations in 2 places. So that was updated in chapter 20.72, which is the parking code, and then also in chapter 20.110, which is the mixed use code, because each development follows separate documents. And so it's updated in both to reflect the same for the residential.
Amy, could you just give us a little summary of what you did to the parking regulations?
Sure. Maybe. No, I can. I forgot we did the whole thing. So for multifamily, it was mainly for multifamily. So we kept single family and duplex the same, 2 spaces per dwelling unit. And then we did an exception that 1 bedroom would require 1 space. That's for single family, mobile homes, duplex, and cottage housing. So I believe that is the same, except for the 1 bedroom. So we added that. Multifamily, well, multifamily is kind of two-sided. So multifamily in the current code was 2 spaces per unit, plus 1 additional space for every 4. So and then in the mixed use code though, there was 0. So that's where the difference was. So if you developed under one of the a regular zone and not under the mixed use, that was the requirement. If you were developing under the mixed use code, it was at 0. That's something that we did when we adopted it in 2017 to try to give the option back to the developer to know what they should be installing when that didn't quite work.
No.
So our current, or what we're proposing is for a studio or 1 bedroom would be 1.25 spaces per unit, plus 1 additional space for every 4 units. So for every 4 units, you're looking at 6. So for 4 studio or 1 bedrooms, you'd be 6 parking spaces for every 4. And then for 2 bedrooms, it's 2.25 spaces per unit, plus 1 additional space for every 4, which equates to 10 for every 4 units. 3 bedrooms or more would be 2.5 spaces per unit, plus 1 additional space for every 2 units. So that's where, instead of every 4, we went to every 2 to add for the additional bedrooms. And then senior unit only, we have 1 space per unit plus 1 additional space for every 4. And we didn't used to have the 1 additional space for the seniors.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can we talk in between or? Yeah, since there's so much with this, do you mind if we just have discussion as we
Sure.
go along?
Yep.
So, council, if you want to ask a question, just let me know. Marilyn wants to ask a question.
Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that I'm very pleased with the changes that you've proposed, because the situation at some of the developments we've had has been really a sad situation. To have a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment where you can only have one vehicle. And so this will help a lot. It doesn't solve what's already happened, but the sooner we get this passed, the sooner it'll be in effect for new development coming. So until public transportation becomes more available, which isn't happening right now, Arlington needs to have places for their people to park where they live. And so I think this is wonderful.
Thank you, that sounds
I
great.
support it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to go over the details so we could
Yeah.
know what the department did with
Yeah.
our input.
It-
Yeah.
it's
No,
good.
thank you very
It's-
much.
It's good
'Cause
stuff.
I'm sure you all memorized 640 pages since.
49 pages.
49, yeah.
I found some favorite parts.
I want to hear about those.
Okay. You'd be surprised.
And then we updated the permitting process within chapter 20.110 as well. We originally set up the mixed-use code to be more of a administrative, a submit and get a permit. And I think I was unfortunately not here right at the beginning, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there. But we reverted back to doing we have a zoning permit, a special use, and conditional use. And so with a special use permit, it's anywhere, it's like 20, well, anything less than like 20 units. 19 and less would be a special use permit. Anything over is a conditional use, which goes to the hearing examiner. And so we actually wanted these mixed-use developments to go to a hearing examiner. They have a bigger impact, especially with, mentioned parking. A lot of other things we wanted the neighbors to know. We wanted them to get noticed. And so with a zoning permit or by right permit, no notice goes out. And so I know that it was changed early on to make sure that that notice goes out to the 500 feet of the property. So that's why we went from, you'll see, if you got there, because it's kind of at the end, if you got there, we changed everything from a P to a SUP, which is a special use permit, or a CUP. And then that dividing line is that 20 units. So 20 units and more goes to, that is so incorrect. I'm so sorry. 49 units, so it's 20 to, anything 49 units or less is special use, and then anything over 50 units or more is the conditional use. I apologize for that. The zoning permit is less than 20, so sorry about that. And so that way, both processes have to do public notice. One has a public hearing, the special use only has a hearing if requested. So it has the option of also going to a hearing to be heard and have neighbors be able to voice their opinion in front of the hearing examiner. So that was the biggest change. And then it looks like a lot in the code because there's 5 different place types within the mixed-use development regulation. So I had to go through each, it's the same thing but 5 times because it had to hit all of those areas.
So Amy, I just want to understand what you're saying. So
Yep.
only if we're building a multifamily housing unit or have being requested to get permits for 50 or more units, will the notice go out to the neighbors?
No, it'll go out with every permit.
Okay.
Yep. One just requires a hearing automatically and one doesn't, only if requested.
Okay, thank you.
But yes, public
I just wanted to
notice.
clarify what I thought I heard.
Yep. Public notice and SEPA usually will go out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sometimes I get messy with. We did update, actually, I'm going to come back to, then we also updated the design standards for parking lot landscaping, fencing, green walls, siding of parking areas, those kind of things that were in our chapter, or we had drawings for, but no verbiage. So there was actually something that I didn't even know was in the design standards until I started going through it, and I was like, well, there it is. It just wasn't in the word, so I wasn't looking at the picture, so we created the words for it. So we went through and did some of those updates, did some roofing requirements, different types of roofing. That's just some cleanup of language in there where we've had discrepancies with developers. They'll say, well, that's not exactly what it says, so we made the change to be exactly what it says. And then we did make 6 transect map changes, so that's what I have to show you.
Before we get there, can Marilyn ask her
Oh,
question?
yes.
on
Well, I was concerned about landscaping on developments and that.
Okay.
Is there, you know what's really annoying is when you're coming out of the parking lot and you want to look to see if there's cars coming and they have
Bushes.
shrubbery out there and you cannot see. Is there something that can be done so that they can't do that? It's just annoying.
Yeah, we can probably do that without
Intersection
anything with
buffers.
code. It can be
Yeah.
low. So we just had Safeway do this, actually. So
Okay.
Safeway is in for an addition onto their building.
Right.
And so at their southern driveway by the gas station, you can't see when you come out. And
No,
so
it's horrible.
we asked them to remove what was there and only plant something that was going to grow less than 3 feet. So then that way you can still see from your car. And so they're going to replant that area. But that's something that we can do on the development level, unless you want us to add it in, we can add it in as well. But that's something I think we can do just through our review, or like I said, I can add that in, that's no problem.
So how is that monitored?
A complaint basis through code enforcement.
Complaint, okay.
And then Public Works actually goes out to see what the sight lines
Yeah.
are somewhere.
oh,
But I
gosh,
do think, I think it's probably okay for you to handle it internally in your
Okay.
design review.
Okay.
You know, just as long as, you know.
But we can put that in our conditions as well. It's really easy to add that at every entry point, that they have to be low-growing plants, no more than 3 feet. That's an easy condition to add to everything.
I think that'd be good because, you know, it's illegal to pull out in the intersection to see
Yeah.
around those.
But you can't see.
Yeah. Don, go ahead.
Just a question here, and it might be just a general question, as far as the codes for these parking strips. Is there any teeth in it for enforcing the maintenance of them parking strips? I mean, here we got that nice intersection down there with that 7-Eleven on Highway
Yeah.
9, but the parking strip
It's
looks like
horrible.
looks
Yeah.
like it's a swamp. There's no maintenance being done to that.
Oh, yeah.
There's supposed to be.
Yeah, there isn't.
And it goes through, I think right now it just goes through code enforcement.
Is that where it goes?
So, we would just need to have the complaint come in and then,
Let's do a
Okay.
service request.
That's-
The
Yeah.
city's website.
That's why I was wondering, just even like some of our other city streets where the
be
trees
nice.
growing over the sidewalks
very
and so
bad
forth.
there.
agreed.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I do.
Okay, Michelle also has a question.
Okay.
Just back up to the parking.
Sure.
With like apartments. Is there anything that is being built or being looked to be built that would fall under the old parking? Or would it all?
Yes.
Can we
There's-
change that, like, when this is approved?
I think we have two that have submitted. But we're going to ask them, one has already provided a parking demand study, and then we're putting it back on them. That's the Apple Builder site, on 67th and 188th. And then there's a development west of the Best Western in Smoky Point. It's called Cascade Mixed Use. And they have not submitted, they've waited probably about 6 months to resubmit. So we'll be asking them to do a parking demand study as well, because then at least it gives us something at least to say, you said that this is what it was gonna be, and then it gives us some more enforcement. But those should be the only two that are built under the existing code. I don't foresee anything, if this goes forward, I don't see anything coming in the next couple weeks for this to be able to be finalized.
Okay. So no residential, so we should be good. Like
Well, those are
anything in the
mixed use,
future.
they're apartments.
Or- yeah,
both of
okay.
those. But no, I don't think there's any other ones that should really affect it.
All right, thank you.
I will double check though, and I can
Yeah,
email
I'm
that
curious
to
about the
you.
ones across from Safeway.
Oh, yeah, so they were already, you're right. Those ones, to me, were already, the ones I mentioned have not been approved yet. But yes, you're
But there are
right.
things that have been permitted already under
Correct.
the old code.
Yeah, so it'll be the one on 204th, the Pilchuck Village, has
Which we
not opened
can't
yet.
change
The
legally, but I
Lux,
just want you to
which is
understand.
across. Yeah, actually, I can go over a few more. So, Pilchuck Village is along 204th, they have not opened yet fully. The Lux, the one that the mayor referenced from, across from Safeway. What's that one's called? We always call it Woodmansey.
Well,
I'm
they
gonna
have
get the name
private
wrong.
roads
The one
and-
behind, the one south of Amazon.
Yeah, the workforce housing.
That one has not opened yet.
The one down at the end of
Goldstream.
Division, that, they haven't even submitted anything yet, right?
Paisley,
No, they have
yes.
approval already. His are a little, or should hopefully be the same as the other end of town. He does a lot of studios. So we haven't seen, I'm crossing my fingers that we don't see an issue with his at the other end of town.
Okay.
The studios seem to be more easily contained within the parking
Right.
regulations. And then Goldstream is at 35th and Smoky Point Boulevard, and that one has been approved as well.
Okay.
So there are still a few out there. Hopefully, they don't create anything.
Okay.
Okay, Marilyn has another question.
It
What was
seems that when they, under the existing code, I guess, they count on where they build having parking elsewhere, such as Safeway parking lot or, wherever, whatever's available. They say, just park on the street, or you can, go use these other parking lots, which is not really acceptable. So I think that's what was happening. People are saying, you only get one spot for a two-bedroom, but what if you can park over in Safeway, or what if you can park over on Highland View Drive, or whatever? And actually, the Centennial Park people suggested that they park over at Park 77, which, who in the heck would walk from there to go to work and park their car there? It's insane. Anyway, I just had to say that.
Thank you.
Because it's annoying.
I understand. Okay, so then okay. This might be hard to see. It is gonna be kind of hard to see.
We dim
So,
the light a little
the top
bit.
one is the previous, so that
So
was
light.
before. So just remember that these are changes that happened from 2020. So these aren't things that we're doing them now, but they are reflected in the ordinance that was passed in 2020. So you can see some changes around this area, and in here, and then over here, it goes from, so you get all the striped area that's like proposed or future, and now it's not proposed or future for half of that. So those were the main changes to the overall transect. So now we're talking anything within the mixed-use overlay and/or the commercial corridor. So this is the commercial corridor map prior and then after. So the zoning map changed to all these little cutouts that you can kind of see going in and out, in and out, in and out. So that's where commercial corridor follows, so that's how the transect changed.
The cutouts are because you've realized it's fully developed?
I'm not sure, actually. I don't know, I could get back to you on that
Okay, I
at the
would be
next meeting.
interested.
I don't know where, I tried to get as much information as I could.
I have a thought on that, because I think I asked Mark about that a while ago. And I think he went through to make sure it was actual property
Yeah.
lines.
I think you're right.
Because some of them were cutting properties in half.
Half.
So he went through and cleaned it up, so that's why it's
Oops.
not a
Yeah.
straight line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm looking at a straight line, I'm looking at the cutouts actually in it.
The cutouts was correcting
Around
what
all
the
the
actual
properties.
property lines are for the owners.
So the owner didn't have.
Of a split zoning.
parts, one
Meal
zone and-
zones, does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
I'm just not sure
Doesn't
where
look
it was
right.
cutting their property, so.
Well, but that's why it's zigzaggy now rather than straight.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Deborah.
yeah, the back end of it.
Isn't that
The west
correct?
side of it.
It probably is.
I was looking more at the front side where there's gaps, where it used to be red. The
Oh.
corridor was
Oh.
solid.
Oh, I think
And now
it's,
there are gaps in the
I
corridor.
think it's because this is this is a plat. An existing full plat,
Because that was something you and I
probably.
Yeah.
to make sure.
Yes.
And then this is the one in Portage, or Camp Prairie area. So this, you can see, this was all future with the shading, and then with the commercial corridor, this follows the line of the commercial corridor now. So it goes from the stream all the way down to this line, and up here, it ended right here and went straight up, and so we've incorporated all of this frontage area on both sides.
Is that 204th then that we were
This
seeing?
is
In the middle.
204th
Yeah,
right now.
okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
Just to make sure.
And then this was due to a rezone from commercial to light industrial, and this is the Amazon site.
Okay.
So that had to be removed. This one was also removed, so the map changed because it was laid out differently when it went farther east. So this was the same thing, this got changed to LI for
North
Cascade
Point.
Business Park. And then with the removal of that, with the rezone, it only left the small square. And then we had another one along this area. This area got changed into business park for the airport. And so now we're left with these commercial areas. So they can develop commercially and/or under the mixed use.
Well, they can't have housing there,
No.
so mixed use of commercial development.
Mixed
yeah.
use like retail with offices above,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So if they want to do that kind of thing, then they have to follow the mixed use development regulations. If they just want to do commercial by itself, well, I guess it's still allowed. I don't know. This is kind of the SD, we've never really had a development in SD yet, or wanted to. Everybody's gone the underlying zone of either highway commercial out in Island Crossing or commercial. So I don't know if we'll have anyone ever develop under the SD, because there really isn't an incentive to.
So why do we,
I don't know.
that's a fair question.
Is it in the state book or anything?
The what?
Any state book? You know, I know that the state has their regulations and code that we would, so it's not saying you have to have this section?
No, they're not.
Okay, okay.
And then I'm gonna move on to, unless there's anything on those.
One thing I wanted to say, just going back to
Oh.
providing the different zoning, the RMOD and different things, was I just wanted to state that, you know, our purpose for doing that was to provide, hopefully, that missing middle housing. So I just wanted to get that on the record too, why we did that. So that was very, very important to us as a council to set that.
Thank you.
So it would be fun to see in the future, as we do the comp plan update, that some of those transects actually work to incent that type of missing middle housing. It doesn't all need to be multifamily.
Correct.
We can, you know, so that's what I was talking to you about, the feathering of it. We need to get
The
some of
cottage
the
housing
missing
and
middle.
things, yeah.
That's exactly what we want as well, so, perfect. At the public hearing before Planning Commission, we did have some public comments, and I accidentally omitted them from, I didn't mean to not include them in your packet, but they were not included, so I wanted to go over some of the items that were brought up. So we had Mr. Ryan Larson, Mr. Dylan Sluter, Councilmember Schweddy, and, the other one didn't talk. Provide comment at the public hearing. So some of the things that came up were, they didn't like the way we named our plats with minor and major and reflecting state law. So we have enough state law within our, we have to follow state law regardless. So I made some definition updates for them, and they seem to be okay with that. There was a suggestion that land division is not usually in the permissible use table. We weren't amending that section, and so we didn't make a change. We told them that we would look at that and change that with our, actually, I should back up. So just, the code amendments we were looking for right now are to get us through the next 2, maximum 3 years. So what we want to do is rewrite the entire zoning code to reflect the comprehensive plan after it's updated in 2024. So beware in 2025 for another big packet of items.
We're going to ask you to do it by section then.
We are going to do it by sections, yes. And so so some of these things that we talked to those members, and I should have said Mr. Sluter's from Master Builders. He represents the Master Builders for the Northwest. And so after we met with them, we agreed on what we would change and what could wait. And so when I said there's no change to that yet, it means that we didn't want to make it in this change because we didn't want to go back through and make an amendment that we weren't making already. But we told them that we're fine with that coming out. It's not a big deal. We'll look at that at the next stage. They wanted a final plat vesting, and we did not make that change in our code this round. We have to follow state law anyway. So when a plat is finalized, it's vested for 5 years under the current codes. So stormwater, land use, if there was anything, mainly stormwater is what, and wetlands, those kind of things. Anything like that is vested for the 5 years. If they don't build out by then it's subject to new regulations. So if they have a house that's not built out yet, it would be subject to whatever we had in place at that time. So we have to follow state law anyway, and our code mentions chapter or RCW 5817, which is the platting with the state. So we didn't make that change yet. We told them that if that's something that needs to be spelled, we've never been asked that question as far as I know. We've just always done it with everyone. So if it becomes an issue, we will just have people follow state law. They wanted us to change to type permits, type 1, 2, 3, 4, instead of zoning, special use, and conditional use. And I actually say hallelujah to that, but we didn't want to make that change. It was too big of a thing to do with this. That would have changed pretty much everything across the board again. So I feel it would have been twice as many changes. So we asked if we could look into doing that in our future change, and it was something I was already wanting to suggest, so I thought it was perfect that it came forward as a public comment, very easy to support. Administrative approval for final plat, they liked that, and that's as proposed. There was some comment from Master Builders that stated that would really speed up the process for home builders. They also appreciated the ADU reform and liked that we took as much as we did, or to propose as much as we did. They were concerned about the removal of panhandle lots. So we didn't really have anything in there. We didn't have anything in our code that said you could or could not do them. And so we actually put in a requirement, or we actually asked, or the original proposal was to remove panhandle lots altogether. After meeting with them and talking with them, we went back and forth on director discretion, and they didn't, we kind of went back and forth on that, and then they didn't end up wanting that either, so we put it under a variance process. And then I'm not sure, I think they may be asking for it to go back under director discretion, but I've not got that public comment yet. So if it goes back, it's what we originally proposed to them. So I'm not sure which way it'll come to you if we get the comment or how council would like it.
Okay.
So the reasoning behind that is from everything else we're doing with mixed use, with bringing houses up to the street front, and with all the design we've been doing throughout the city, the reason we're asking for the removal or to not allow them was because it puts houses behind other houses. And so with the director's discretion and our variance process, it would allow it to still happen, which we're in support for, staff is in support for, on lots that can't be developed any other way. If there's no other way to develop it but through a panhandle, then of course that's something that we would more than likely allow and want to happen. So it's kind of in between those two
It'd
things.
be nice to see that's a place to put missing middle, duplexes, fourplexes on the
Right,
flag
exactly,
lots.
instead of 2 single-family homes, if you
Exactly.
did something different. And
Right.
that's, thank you, that's exactly, they could do a driveway to go behind, and have
I mean,
parking
then it won't
behind if
make,
they want.
then it won't make a
but-
difference if it's not facing the street as if the other houses are, but that's how you can get missing middle into
Right.
some of these.
Are there some up here in Old Town?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought so.
They called it something else,
They're off
though.
of
this
Highland.
Flag lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't remember what they
Flag-
called it.
What was it?
A flag lot,
A
probably.
flag lot. that
Okay,
was
yeah,
it,
because, yeah, Panhandle, I was trying to
Yeah.
picture it in my mind, but now that you're saying that, that's what I was thinking it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that one we kind of went back and forth on and came up with our solution, but that's ultimately up to council on that. They were concerned about the maximum lot coverage within the medium densities, so in RMOD and RMC, and we actually were too. We left it at the 35%, and they asked it to go to 45, and we made that change. And the reason we made that change is because it's smaller lots. So some of these areas are 1,000 to 2,000 square foot lots. Like if we were trying to get smaller, or through a unit lot subdivision or through other means. And so that 35% doesn't really let you build much of a house. And so we upped it to the 45. They still have their open space, their private open space, that kind of thing. Anyway, so we did change that for both of the medium density, or medium capacity zones. And then they were concerned with garage setbacks. And so we came up with garage setbacks, same kind of reason as the flag or panhandle lot, is we didn't want the garage doors to dominate the street. So what we were asking, so we came up with two different options. We had one option, and after talking to master builders, we came up with a solution. So if it's we agreed on a solution, that's up to council, on a single-story house or a single-story garage. So you can have a two-story house with a single-story garage, then it would sit back 8 feet from the face of the house. If it was a two-story, then it would only be 4 feet, because you would have it cavaliered over the top of, the house would be 4 feet, the garage would be under, house would be over. So, and then if you have alley access, then it's totally different. It's off the table, because it's not on the street frontage. So it's only when they access from the front. So we went around and around with this, with this group, and I do understand where they're coming from, with big subdivisions, 100, 80, 60 even houses to 150 houses in a subdivision. I can see where something like this might be really detrimental to a builder to have to do, but we don't see Arlington having any more of those types of developments. So that's what we're proposing to have as our infill, basically. So the smaller lots, the one house here, and it really have that show the front of the house, much like the flag and panhandle lot. They asked us.
Deborah has a question.
Just
Sorry.
a question thinking
Sure.
about that, because, and I know it just really varies on the property. But don't we try to encourage rear loading houses, thinking of safe streets so you don't have cars backing over sidewalks, when you have pedestrians and bicyclists and stuff? So is that,
Yeah, we do when we can, but not every area could. If I could have an alley on every house, I would be in heaven, but
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. So
Okay.
we have to allow for the other side.
especially these big divisions, correct? Okay.
And I have a couple of examples. Oh, that's a flag. Well, this is a flag lot. So here's 3 in a row. This is in
Okay.
Arlington. So you see 3 houses.
Yeah.
Driveway 1, 2, and 3 to get the 3 houses in.
Yeah.
This I drove around today. So this is what, no offense if this is someone's house, I should have blacked out the license plate number now that I'm sitting next to the police. But, this is what we're trying to avoid. Where's the entry?
Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah.
This one's not bad, but it was built on the front. And so with this, it would be to the side or to the rear instead of right off the front. This one's probably about 22 feet deep. And then this is what we're looking to have. So this is probably only about 4 feet right now, but this is what we're looking for. So these are around, just not as deep of what we're asking. So this is like the single story one. And then if it was above, if they had a second story above the garage, then it would still sit the same spot and it could come out. They'd either need to set it back like this and have the second story above, or they could cavalier it over
Okay.
the second story. Oh, those are my, oh, go back to
So
the blank
Amy, I
page.
realize that we don't have a lot of areas that aren't going to be master plan neighborhoods to build a lot of
Right.
single-family housing in. But we do hope someday to be able to squeeze our UGA boundaries out a bit more.
Yes,
And so I'm wondering if these should be specific for infill, and it should be stated that way, so that we can leave our options open if we
Sure.
ever get enough room to build single-family housing again. You know, we
That's
really
fine.
want to build it in a cost-effective way for both the developer and the people who are going to be buying the homes.
yeah, is that something that council would be good with me changing for next?
So how would you word that then? Infill, use the word infill?
Yeah, we could probably leave, I'd have to look at the red lines, but we could probably do it all within the same where it's at and just say for infill, garage, or
Okay.
like this, and then we just don't do anything.
Because it seems that's the most
Um,
logical place where people will try and get the garage real forward to infill a
It
lot.
would be
you
in
know.
the infill lots, yeah, I hear what you're saying, I'm fine with that.
Okay, then I will make that change and let you know. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
And let's see, we had a place in our code that required all permits to be recorded, and I actually didn't even know it was there. Master builders caught that, and so we removed it. We do not require all permits to be recorded. Just the normal boundary line adjustment, plats, binding site plans, all that kind of stuff gets recorded as normal. But this had it stating all zoning, special use, and conditional use permits be recorded, and that's not something that we have been doing at all, as far as I know, ever. So that was removed. Let's see. We updated the driveway lengths. We had a set number in of like 5 feet. So currently we have a 22-foot driveway requirement from a public road for front access. And then we have a 5 feet for an alley, just because it's the building setback. And we left those in there, but then when we changed the private road and the townhouse, it was brought up that those numbers might not work as well, so we made a range. There's quite a few, Mark and I have gone on a couple little tours of different areas of townhomes, trying to look at different developments and how they can be built out. So some of them are actually like right on like the, kind of like the sidewalk, but they're front loaded because it's a private road, but there's no place to park but in your garage. And so we, instead of doing an exact number, we updated it to 0 to 5 feet, so that gave a range. And then also from 20 to 22 feet on the other end for certain types of housing off of non-public roads. So that way it gave them a range of being able to look at it. And so that was an item that was brought up at the public hearing that we talked about and made that change. And then the obvious one that I did not bring up when I was looking at the transect map was that we removed the T5MS from the transect map and removed all information around that from chapter 20.110. So that is no longer a proposal, and that will be looked at in future years, more than likely with the next code amendment after the comp plan. And then, let's see, so we met with all of them the Monday after and worked all that information in. And then the last thing I think I have for you, unless you want me to go through some red lines individually afterwards, the only thing that I would like to bring up is that Planning Commission, through their findings and fact that you have in your packet, made a recommendation to not include chapter 20.110 at all. So the recommendation was to recommend approval for all other chapters except for that one. And so staff wanted to bring it to you as council, just because we believe that the controversial issue might have been, or item might have been removed, and we still need other areas of chapter 20.110, we feel still need to be adopted. So that's why we removed that, but it was after, we removed it after we went to public hearing, so they may or may not have a different outlook on it, I'm not sure.
All right.
So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Thank you. Deborah has a question.
Sure.
Well, as a statement, I want to say thank you for bringing it forward. I watched the meeting live and watched the planning commission. I'll just say that as far as that motion, I have questions about it. But, so I'm glad that you dropped the T5 and all the surrounding words and have brought what you brought to us, very complete and thorough. And so I appreciate the amount of work it is. And as I was reading through all the chapters of it, and I had to say to my daughter, who's a plans review person, I was like, do you really know where to find these things? But then as I was watching you, you knew where to open the book for the parking section. I appreciate that, because we see it, you know, once in a while you guys bring it to us, and it's overwhelming. But, so I really appreciate the amount of work you put into this, Amy, and the thoroughness. And some of the really key elements are important to us. The parking is
Oh, yeah.
huge. You know, that's something we hear about a lot. But even, to be honest, I was reading about the roof lines and different things and thought about the building that was built across from me, that's a mixed-use building. And I appreciated the work you did with that developer, so I'm not looking out at weird big things sticking out of the top of the roof of that building. So, so it blends into historic downtown. So I, as a resident, I appreciate that. So thank you for the work you've done.
Thank you.
Okay, Marilyn, you're next.
Yeah, thank you too. I really appreciate all the work you did in the telephone conversations and personal meetings. It was very helpful. But so I just wanted to clarify tonight, so the planning commission voted to take the whole 20.110 out,
That is correct.
but we're saying we don't want that. We want just the T5 out.
That's what we proposed
Okay.
back to
I
you.
That's what the department's
Okay, I
proposing.
just want
So
to
we
make
can-
sure I
Yeah.
got that clear.
Yep.
And because this parking thing is so important that we deal with that right away. And the other thing was Jan, did you say that Jan Schweddy
Oh.
was at the public hearing?
Yes, she was.
Did she speak at the public hearing?
She did. I forgot. I was meant to add that with, she was talking about the smoking point area.
How's that work, Steve?
We talked to her about that. She knows, you know. I mean, it was a strange
talked to
public
me.
hearing if you look at it. They closed the public hearing and then they reopened it. And Jan's comments were basically that she's very confused by this whole big set of documents.
That's
It
not
wasn't
surprising.
appropriate for her to be there.
She
I, as a
said that out
council
loud.
person, would like to
Yeah,
say,
she did.
I've restrained myself for
Yeah.
12 years from things like that.
Me
And
too. I don't think
I was
she's-
very upset as I watched and saw
Mm-hmm.
that.
Okay.
Me
Michelle
too.
is next.
Okay.
So I called Amy today and I said, oh my gosh, how long did it take you to do all this? Because like every time you start reading a section, you get lost and sidetracked. And I think she fell out of her chair when she said she was super tired. But I just thank you for like answering all the questions, because I know that we probably had a ton of questions for you. And so for me, you always provided very accurate answers and straight to the point. So thank you for that. I particularly liked your 12-page summary versus like 600 and some pages, but anyways.
649.
649. So I appreciate that. So that's kind of cool, like in the future,
Okay.
to like have that summary page, and it kind of directs us where to go, you know, for the major stuff. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I too appreciate it. I think the devil with these things is in the details.
Yes.
You know, and that it will take us as a council a while to figure out, hearing back from people, whether we're hitting exactly what we thought our vision was. There's a lot of details in here, so I just ask that we remain open to continue to talk about that.
Always.
Like, that, we don't have unintended consequences. Like, oh, we're making people park on a sidewalk because our driveway legs are too short.
Yeah.
Or something that we're able to, just like with the parking regulations.
Yep.
How we came back and said, having none doesn't work.
No, I appreciate that, and I hope that
Yeah.
you guys will, we want the same thing. So if something that we've changed doesn't work, we want it changed as well. So we didn't, if there is something that needs to be changed, we didn't do it purposefully to make something an issue later, but if it becomes an issue, we want to be able to come back and change that as well
Thank
with you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
The one
appreciate it.
the one thing is, next time, let's do it in chapters.
We will.
All right, is there any additional questions for Amy?
Nope, covered it pretty thorough.
Let
Thank
her
you.
get some sleep tonight.
No one wants to go over the red lines?
No. We already did.
We might be here till 2:50 a.m.
I'm good with that. I'm ready to go. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy. All right, do we have any administrative report?
One thing I wanted to mention is council got an email today from one of the residents at Cedar Point Apartments. We've had a few of these from residents there, and so I just wanted to let council know, I'm working on this, just give me a little bit of time. We've sent staff out there several times on some of these issues. They're unfounded. We're kind of just on a wild goose chase here. So I'm going to work with management on some of these issues, and I talked with Barb today about actually using our social worker interns maybe to help
Michelle's
guide some of these residents in
Michelle's
the right
actually going to get
direction.
us a contact for a senior housing navigator from Homage.
Oh, nice.
That might be a place we can
Yeah.
have somebody
Yeah,
talk to as well.
yeah. So I think there's a symptom in here that we can work on.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Paul.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Jude. Read again. Well, this was interesting to go through these code changes tonight. We're looking at, the future of how Arlington will look and stuff, because today we had our Housing Affordability Regional Task Force got back together, as constituting what we're going to do and how we're going to be able to provide enough housing for all the people who are coming to this region, because they're coming anyway. They already are. So I think that's going to be our big challenge in working on the comp plan, is not only that we, have a vision, we know what Arlington, we know how it wants to feel in the future and how people who live here will experience it, but also too that we're able to provide enough housing and it's affordable, so we can have more people move into home ownership. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments from council members this evening?
No.
I was looking at my phone. No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I just want to give a shout out to Chief and staff for Friday. My daughter goes to Youth Dynamics, and I heard that you guys were all there and just kind of keeping things in order. And so thank you for the support, because that's an amazing opportunity that Youth Dynamics offers our kids to be out at the park, and it's safe and it's fun, and it keeps them out of my house for an hour and a half, and I get to work a little bit longer. So shout out, thank you.
That's nice.
Yeah, I really appreciate the up there. I sure wish the school would consider their teacher in-service day a different day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah. And Fridays.
It's always challenging, I think, for people downtown when all the kids come and they're all hyped up from
What
a whole
happened to
week.
education?
If they did it on a different day, half day, it'd be great.
Say that every time.
All right.
Okay.
Kathy, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak to the council this evening? Now would be your chance. So since we only have 2 items, I'm assuming you want them both on the regular agenda, or do you want to let Jim go on the consent agenda?
I'm okay with Jim going on the
I
consent.
am too. It's a bid that's. Yeah, dream on, dear.
Amy?
Maybe you're it.
You're not done yet.
You've already proved you like to overwork, so no. All right, and then we also are going to have an executive session this evening. Mr.
Okay.
Feifel, you want to lead us into that?
I will, Your Honor. Madam Mayor, we've got an executive session for 2 purposes. One, to discuss some pending litigation. Another relates to consideration of a real estate acquisition. I do think it's going to take at least 30 minutes, so I'm going to use that amount of time as our estimate, and we'll reconvene. We don't expect to take any action when we get back into regular session.
Okay, great, thank you. So at this time, we'll convene into executive session. To order. Exactly 30 minutes later.
It's your turn,
Good.
Marilyn.
Madam Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second?
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
All righty then.